You ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and he ain't folk, and she ain't folk, and we ain't folk, and they ain't folk. It's not racism, it's just what we do. It's not ignorance, it's just who you believe. It's not hurting us because we already know. It hasn't taken us far beyond control. It doesn't poke a million holes in your soul. It doesn't make an innocent child grow old. It doesn't fill your heart with anger and disgust. It doesn't make a profit off the young and old. It doesn't make your art more intriguing to discuss. It doesn't make your lust exploit all of us, fear all of us, reveal all of us. It won't do any good to just listen. It doesn't feel good to try different thinking about gender, color, culture, and race, cause it can't be generalizing, it can't be stereotyping, it can't have evolved into this current lifestyle. It can't be perpetuated by the media and entertainment who tell it like it is, the past non-existent. We can't all wanna be healthy or happy. We can't be watching to see who kills who next or first. It can't all seem so well rehearsed. It couldn't be that unheard screams can hurt. It's not that we're tired, we're not overworked. It's not that so many of us have died for no purpose. It's not that so many of us are tired of this, blinded by this, entwined in this, striving through this, realizing that it's not anything, it's just how it is.
These be the problems that we face. These be the problems. These be the problems that we face. I'm talking poverty and race.
You ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and he ain't folk, and she ain't folk, and we ain't folk, and they ain't folk. No, we ain't folk, we ain't bloke, we ain't down, we ain't stoked that we share in this town, this city, this country, broken in fragments, united in the absence of community. I judge you now as you judge me, based on my religion, my race, based on the color of my face, based on belief systems that don't die and don't cease. Beyond the grave, the deceased listen and speak through the voice of a new generation who seek assistance from the past, because the future is a vision already seeing within. But what of the majority intrigued by a so-called culture who on discrimination feeds, dehumanize a people because it sells soft drinks, diffuse freedom fighters with mind manipulation through the pollution of poverty, a haunting disharmony, disarming the descendants of a free world but not a free economy.
These be the problems that we face. Talking poverty and race. These be the problems. These be the problems that we face.
You ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and he ain't folk, and she ain't folk, and we ain't folk, and they ain't folk. You ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and you ain't folk, and he ain't folk, and she ain't folk. No, we ain't folk, and they ain't folk.
These be the problems that we face. Talking poverty and race. The problems that we face. I'm talking poverty and race. These be the problems that we face. I'm talking poverty and race. The problems. These be the problems. The problems that we face.
There are some people that I find it pretty difficult to like. Like is an affectionate emotion, and I can't like anybody bombing my home. I can't like anybody who would exploit me. I can't like anybody who would trample over me with injustices. I can't like them. I can't like anybody who threatens to kill me day in and day out.